is your messaging accurate and differentiating you? Because stories build trust, they align the team, and they differentiate you. So is your story doing those three things?
You're listening to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience, a podcast dedicated to helping executives train their sales and marketing teams to optimize growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. Let's accelerate your growth in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience. I'm your host, Cory, and today I'm talking with Dave Mastovich. He's the CEO and founder of MASSolutions, a growth-oriented marketing consultancy best known for its no BS marketing approach that emphasizes clear, measurable strategies grounded in practical storytelling and behavioral insights. He is the author of No BS Marketing, 7 Contrarian Ways to Increase Referrals for Healthcare Providers. And if you're searching that, I am abbreviating that because we have a clean rating on the podcast. That book became an Amazon #1 bestseller. He's also the long-running host of the No BS Marketing podcast. You can sense a theme here. It's going to be a frank conversation. I'm excited about it, featuring more than 500 episodes focused on marketing, leadership, and effective messaging. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into it. But before we get into some of the larger discussions that you and I talked about beforehand, I just want to know, where did you start in marketing? Where did you begin your journey, and what was that like?
Without even realizing it, as a kid, I was really into trying to understand what made people think and act and decide on things. And my brother and I created comic books and sold them in the neighborhood. And then I actually sold Fuller Brush as a teenager. But then as a teenager, I landed DJing. I built my own DJing business for dances, nightclubs, weddings, but also got some on-air shifts. Then I did a little bit of TV, then a little newsprint. And what I found was in each of those positions, whether it was DJing for an event or being on the air or being on TV or writing for a newspaper, you really had to define and understand that audience and then have a clear story. That's how you won. And I saw that that was something that was compelling to me and came kind of naturally to me. So then I studied that, and I became a big student in college and graduate school, and my first few jobs, and continue to this today, is on behavioral science, cognitive science. And so that is really what I think has excited me and kept me through my entire career.
That's quite the journey. And I agree that it's all about audience to start and end. And it's also something that it's incredibly easy to lose track of. I'm curious, so you went from DJing to journalism to graduate school. What key lessons stood out to you during that time and helped refine your own philosophy on marketing?
Well, the first thing was, while I had the chance to be doing the DJing, whether it was at a college party or a bar, and then on radio stations and then on TV and writing, it forced me to really hone my skills as a storyteller. But then I landed the turnaround of 2 radio stations that I was working at, and they were bankrupt and ranked 13th and 14th out of 14 stations. And I got to apply everything instinctually or what I had been taught. And lo and behold, it kind of worked. So I was doing all these things that were either instinctual leadership or based on some of the training from management courses and so forth. And I saw that storytelling also played a huge role in leadership. Now, I will say, I talked about that my entire life. And in fact, I was quoted in 2013 or 2012. My first book said, get where you want to go through marketing, selling, and storytelling. And I was interviewed on different things. And one time I was doing a crisis communications, and the council member was on camera saying, his company does storytelling. Why don't you just tell the truth? And she was like, because she thought I was helping the other side to tell their story. And I tell you that story because as late as 2015 or 16, the word storytelling was kind of negative. It was kind of punitive. It was BS. And now it's shifted in the last 7-8 years to where everyone's talking about storytelling. Well, that's how I viewed storytelling because I understood the cognitive science behind it even 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how those terms pop up and have different connotations over time. Like you said, storytelling was sort of like fluffy back in the day. Now everyone's like, oh no, that's actually how we get clear on our messaging and connect with people that want to buy our things. It's very useful, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's get into some of the main questions that you and I talked about. One of the things that I'm most curious about is you've spoken extensively about the B2B stalled growth cycle. What does this cycle typically look like, and what are some of its key identifiers?
Sure. Well, it's particularly prevalent in mid-market B2B, but I would say pretty much all B2B. It starts off with this. Somebody in leadership or multiple people in leadership say something to the effect of, marketing doesn't work, or our marketing isn't working. That's a telltale sign if they can't answer, well, what is the definition of marketing working? What is the definition of marketing working? And that's the problem. They usually can't define what they even mean, or it's fluffy, or it's just not realistic. And when you can't define what working is in marketing, then the cycle begins and you start to budget by guessing. I had a prospect say to me the other day, Cory, that seems like a lot of work. That's probably worth the price. And I said, you know what? We might not be a good fit. And there was silence. And I said, because here's the situation. It's not about budgeting by guessing. If you're budgeting by guessing and saying that seems like a good pound of flesh for that fee, you're going to become frustrated and I'm going to become frustrated. So budgeting by guessing is the next part of the cycle. After that, the next part is because leaders haven't done marketing very often, and they're used to working in efficiency functions. Most of the functions we do in life are efficiency oriented. In an organization, there's only a couple that are effectiveness oriented. One of those happens to be marketing. So if you're a leader that came up through sales or through operations or through finance, you're used to efficiency evaluations. And so you now want to get the most out of your marketing team. So we've spent so much on this marketing team. Give them this and make it look pretty. Give them that and make them look pretty. Hey, make sure they do the golf outing. So the next phase of the stalled growth cycle is marketing is all tied up in tactics. They're bogged down. They have too much requests and they're unable to be held accountable to growth because they're being held accountable to these other things. That leads in the cycle for sales to blame marketing. All these leads stink. The campaigns are crappy. What does marketing say? Sales doesn't know what they're doing. They don't get it. They're not following our stuff. So now the leader comes in to be the good person and says, I'm a good leader. And they decide we're going to do shiny object. Shiny object might be new ad agency. It might be new shiny tactic. And what that means is that campaigns are created on opinion, not based on insights. And then that leads to the failure of those campaigns and lost revenue. And I believe in our evidence, I know, our history has shown that most B2B companies are leaving at least 20% or more of revenue on the table each year because of this mid-market B2B stalled growth cycle. And that's the whole cycle. And it all starts when they can't define what working is, but they can say marketing isn't working.
Yes. Yes. And
I
yes
usually
again.
get smiles and nods. I usually get smiles and nods, and I have that all graphically done. And what's great is whenever you do it in front of a leadership team, and it's almost initially that they're like pointing at each other, and they all just bust out laughing.
Yeah.
Because marketing admits it, sales admits it, the CEO admits it, the CFO admits it. If they're in a culture of openness, if they're not, I've had silence. Then I'm like, well, this is going to end quickly, and that's good because they're not going to like me. They aren't going to like the no BS guy and his team. That's for sure.
It's so funny because as a marketer, right, and as a marketer that has worked with many different companies, I come from an agency background, right?
Yeah.
Working with many different companies across industries, and also in my work now at value selling, right, also kind of consulting and working with other companies as well across industries, multiple sizes. This seems incredibly self-evident to me and widespread. And yet, I think it's one of those things that we easily get locked into.
Yes.
I think I've been in teams where this has happened. And I think
Yes,
that we, even subconsciously without realizing that, we kind of default to those positions sometimes when
for
the
sure.
pressure's on or when there's confrontation, right? We pick up our script, for lack of a better word, and sort of play our role. So I guess, how can we break out of that? How can a company recognize, oh no, we can all laugh at this from the outside, but this is actually a portrait of us and where we are, and we are stuck.
It's a great question because the reason that everyone laughs and nods is it is so prevalent, and we do tend to fall into our spots and our stereotypical positions. And here's what I've worked for decades to make that change. And I did it in a number of places. The most notable one is a health system called UPMC, which when I got there was cobbling together and was less than 1 billion. And after 3 years grew to 10 billion. And I got the chance to implement all of the integrated marketing philosophies. And when you're trying to go through that amount of growth, or prior to that, I did turnarounds. And when you're in a turnaround, that's the most exhilarating position, because when you're in the turnaround, you say all the skeletons go away, all the turf goes away, because you have 6 days cash on hand and you got 2,000 employees. What are you going to do? So that's where I've been able to, in the lab, build this and continually work on it. And the first step is that insights have to be systematically gathered so that you can then know who the target market really is and what they really think. Sounds logical. Everybody would nod their head to that, but that's actually not happening the vast majority of time. When I say vast, I mean at least 80% of the time, it's not happening systematically. It doesn't have to all be quantitative research, but there has to be qualitative and some quantitative research. You have to talk to all of your customers. And I consider 6 target markets for any company. Now, you need to drill these 6 down, but there's 6 of them. Most of them are neglected. So the first one is potential customers. That's not neglected. Most companies go out and spend a great deal of time trying to get new customers. Current customers is the second one. That's actually neglected. They're not communicated to as well as they need to. They're not asked their opinion enough, and they're not asked in a way that they'll actually answer. And the third one is current employees, neglected a ton still to this day. Prospective employees, still usually marketed to from HR, not marketing. And then centers of influence / referral sources, whichever phrase you use. In professional services, they call it centers of influence. Other places call it referral sources. Prospective ones of those and current ones. So all 6 of them have to be talked to and asked questions of, and shut up and listen and gather those insights. And then you also have to use the 80-20 thinking and 80-20 principle when analyzing the data, because your current customer database is gold mine to see who your customers are, but maybe that's not who they should be. So all of that is what has to happen. Those are steps 1 and 2, because that enables you to build the growth system. Build the growth system with an activation plan. Then you begin to work the plan, which that includes elevating the sales team and how they tell stories. It includes your campaigns, your content, and includes lining the teams so that the leadership team and sales team and marketing team and HR team are all working from the same scorecard. So that's a lot of stuff I just threw at you, but that's how you do it. And that's what we call the growth accelerator. We actually call it the mid-market B2B growth accelerator. It's our IP around how to do that and how to get you 20% or more top line revenue growth.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic answer. And I see a lot of parallels between, what you're talking about now, Dave, and sort of aligning and going from the same scorecard and what we talk about at value selling, right? Like, if your go-to-market engine is your orchestra, right, you're playing from the same score. Essentially, you've got to have a common framework, a shared approach. And listening to you talk about, all the different steps and all the different sort of tumblers that need to fall into place, I can see a lot of internal gaps. My mind is working. I'm thinking, okay, well, what if you don't have the data sources, or what if you've got some ego fights at the leadership level, or what if you've got all this stuff. But it's making me curious, because what are the common external factors that can also play havoc when people are trying to break out of that stalled growth cycle?
There's a lot of different ones that come up. And so what I will tell you is I am what I am, like Popeye. And throughout my career, I was that person that led that change. And you need someone in that role. And if it's not an internal person, you do need to bring in someone like me that can even be a consultant. They don't have to come in as a fractional. You can bring someone in to just help the internal team to fight through change, because not everyone is comfortable with that. Like, I was comfortable with coming in and having people basically talk crap on me constantly. I was comfortable with coming in, and I used to have this little trick. I would come in to present to a large audience of, say, doctors or middle managers, and I would present my thing. I'd ask for feedback. Hardly anybody'd say anything. A couple people would shout out an anger thing, and I'd let them go, and I'd come back and I'd finish. I'd say, "Are we done?" And I'd walk out. I'd count to 5 outside and stroll back in, and they were talking crap on me. And I would jump right back to the front of the stage and say, "You wouldn't say that while I was here. So now I came back." And so that's the kind of stuff. Now that's not normal. I don't claim to be normal, but you need to have someone at least willing to do that. And that's one of the things that I'm willing to do. The second thing is, you've got to get the top leader to, we call them success conditions. And one of the success conditions is that growth cannot be handed off. Growth cannot be handed off to a functional leader. Growth cannot be handed off to the director of sales. It cannot be handed off to the director of marketing. Growth has to be owned by the CEO and the top leadership team. And then those leaders have to fight what I call turf builders. And I've lost to turf builders many times, both when I was on the client side and as the company we have, a marketing consultancy. I've lost to turf builders. Just recently, I lost to a couple of turf builders who they're itching to get you, and they're going to try to find something that you did wrong. So I tell the leader when they hire us, there's this thing we're called humans. And humans do this thing called mistakes. So that's going to happen. Now, you can let the turf builders magnify those mistakes and make it like, let's assassinate the marketing consultant. Or you can say, I'm going to be a leader and tell them, of course, yeah, when they were on the website in week 3, this happened. But they got the website done, and we're driving this growth with the sales team. They changed the sales process. You can be a leader. So it's really that leader. And when we get a good engagement, that leader led. And when we get a bad engagement, that leader was more of a manager. So I'm not going to kid you and tell you I have all the answers. I don't. I have struggles with clients regularly because I got to get better during the qualifying process and say no more often. Like I just told you the story at the beginning, I actually kind of forced that person into a no when I said, if you're going to look at it as like, that seems like a lot of work, it's worth that amount of money, let's not go any further. I have to have the courage to do that, which is really hard because, we're in an economy that's insane. So when I turn down business and come back to the team, it's like, what's this guy doing? So I'm not claiming it's easy. I'm not claiming any of the stuff that I just said is easy.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. That's an intriguing point, and I think it's something that it's advice that gets shared, and it's good advice. And at the same time, a lot of people aren't willing to delve into what you just did, Dave, right? The consequences of that, of going back to your team and saying like, they weren't going to be a good fit. We had to pass on that. I think the natural reaction is why, or how did you know, or how can we quantify that they wouldn't be a good fit? Maybe they'd be difficult for 2 weeks, but maybe they'd be a client for 2 years. So, how do you maybe talk to us a little bit about the grace of turning away clients?
Yes. So the first thing that I would say about that is, I start off joking about I'm human, have mistakes. When I'm at my best is when I'm open to others. And I'm not always at my best. I'm human. So I have a CEO mastermind group that I'm part of. I have various people that I consider an advisory board, but I also hire consultants. And I will tell you, that's what has really helped me, because I'm able to come back and say, let's hone our success conditions and let's get an outside person to tell us what those success conditions should be in their eyes. We're going to tell them what we're saying. First of all, just calling them success conditions is a little bit different. We used to just call them key accountabilities of both parties, and that would be like in the SOW. And someone that I work with said, no, we call those success conditions for all of our clients, change the game, and it does sound a lot better. And so, I'm here, cobbler's son with no shoes. Someone else told me how to tell the story because I'm open to it. I realize that I don't know everything. And so we then build our success conditions so much. And this is just recently, like a year or two ago, it wasn't as tight as this. And the pain is still going to come. I don't claim that because we did that, it's going to not happen. You're still going to have problems, but you've got to set up certain phrases that are going to resonate. And they're going to resonate poorly with someone that probably shouldn't be a client. So then you don't have to say no, they'll say no to you. And I'd say that's the first step, is I think if you're someone selling our services, I would make sure the things that really stifle your creativity, which is different for each organization. Like for ours, it's if you don't give us 3 years sales data, we can't work with you. So that's right in the success condition. If you're only going to talk about the ideas and solutions we come up with and not act on them, that's on as a success condition. We're just telling you, if we're just going to talk about these and you don't do what we say, you're most likely going to feel you overpaid for us. That's in a slide in the before you even got to the heart of working when that's in a slide so that they see that. And it talks about turnaround time within 3 days responding to anything. I don't care if we did a new slogan, tagline, big idea. You better give us feedback. 3 days is too long. 2 days is realistic. So those are things that we put right on a slide. And we've always done this, just not quite as well as we are today. And what that will do is weed out people. No, I'm looking at clients that have been a struggle, and they were because I didn't present that stuff enough and get them to say no to us. And that's really the best way to do that on the selling side.
Yeah, I think it's great advice, and it's something that, for our video listeners or watchers rather, I'm nodding along over here. I also think you mentioned the economy at one point. We're operating in sort of a unique time where the stock market is doing very well, and in some ways the economy feels very brittle, right?
Yes.
I think looking 2 years out, I don't think anyone really knows where we're going to be. So what would you say, the marketing side, like I agree, right? I get it. I'm thinking this is our fit. Let's stick to our guns. We'll be in a better position as a company building
Yes.
our brand a few years down the road. But what do you say to that director of sales that maybe might come to you as an outside consultant and say, no, we need to be flexible now. It doesn't really matter. We don't need to stick to our messaging. We might get a couple bad fit clients, but we need to fill the pipeline, and it needs to happen by the end of Q4.
Well, I would say, is your messaging accurate and differentiating you? Because stories build trust, they align the team, and they differentiate you. So is your story doing those three things? Because if it's truly a differentiator, because one of the things, Cory, that I can say time and again is when I come into a leadership team and there's anywhere from 5 to 7 leaders, when we begin our process and we get one-on-ones with those 7, we ask a question: what do you see as your advantage? What is your advantage? The word advantage. Why does someone choose you? Out of 7 leaders, you're probably going to at least 5 different advantages, maybe 7. So that tells me that that company hasn't defined their advantage, which that means that the sales leader hasn't defined it, and each salesperson. So now that sales leader's saying something a little different than those 7, and the 8 salespeople are all saying something a little different. So my first comment to that salesperson would be, before we even talk about turning away business, let's make sure that we have built our story around what our advantage really is, and we're telling that story. Because if we're telling that story and telling it well, that should already qualify a lot of people. I was talking to someone today that she said to me, she said, Dave, I know what you do and I know how you do it. There are a lot of people out there that are looking for that, but they don't know how to say that they're looking for it, and they don't know who does it. They know that there's a ton of agencies out there to get creative, to get social, to get video, they don't know that there's a company like yours to go do this. And that's one of our challenges, because it's hard to advertise what I just said. But as soon as we start talking about it, in the first conversation, I can tell whether they're a hot lead, a decent possible lead, or no chance because they're looking for a commodity. Let's get the website. And that's my company. Every company has that if they've defined their differentiator, if they've defined their advantage. And I would say that salesperson, has that happened? And if the answer is no, then you got to hire someone. You don't want to hire MASSolutions, hire Cory. You don't want to hire Cory, hire someone else, but get someone that's a professional at this, that's going to narrow down your advantage clearly.
Yeah, it's an excellent answer. I forget the exact stat, but I saw a stat from Gartner where it was something very closely aligned to what you just said. Right? Create a go-to-market council, get your leaders on the same page, and just run through periodically, who's our ideal customer? How do we serve them? What is the value they get from doing business with us? Things that we think are very basic and we may have defined years ago, but just the fact of getting leaders in a room and running through that on a continuous, regular basis, the commercial impact was staggering. So I think it's excellent advice and it can't be overstated.
If you add to that some outbound insight gathering to referral sources, people that believe in you, and to current customers, and to all employees,
Yep.
you add that to your insights gathering, you're going to be able to define your advantage.
All right, so let's shift gears a little bit. Let's get into the book. So
Yeah.
first off, congratulations, Amazon bestseller.
Yes.
And what inspired you to write the book?
Well, my first book was more of a passion project, and it was really interesting because my team sat down with the first book probably 10 years ago, 11 years ago, and we said, "Oh, we'll be able to market this book. We're a marketing consultancy. We have talented team of creatives. We can market this book." And then about 6 months after we got the book, we were at a team meeting, and we said, "You know what we learned? We suck at marketing books." So I had debated whether to do a second one, and though the podcast was so well taken and the whole no BS forward, because a lot of people say BS. Hardly anybody says the full word. I will tell a quick story. When we first started doing that, we used to have BULL $H exclamation point hashtag. Now we just have the exclamation point because since 2014, we've become more profane. So we used the full word, but that was so picked up. People liked it so much. And I thought, well, let's go ahead and do a book. And so this time I said, I'm not going to have us market it. We didn't do a good job of marketing it. So I went out and I interviewed a number of people that were publisher editors and personal brand consultants. I brought in 2 different people, and they didn't know each other. I didn't pin them off against each other, but they were doing different things. And it was great because then I could compare the notes and say, wow, there's this little part where their circles overlap and they both are agreeing. And we just started writing it. And I said, I wanted it to be stories. My first book was a standard book from 1970 to 2010. Books were written, and they were typically between 160 pages and 210 pages if it was a business book. That's what I learned when we did our research. So mine was like 184 or something like that. And I said, nope. I said, I want this one to be able to be read on a flight from Pittsburgh to Chicago, which is 57 minutes in the air. And I said, it's got to be 100 pages or less. So those were the things I sat down and talked to these people about. And we wrote the book relatively quickly because I just kept rattling off these stories. And the person I was working with was tracking all the stories and said, you just rattled off about 17 different chapters. I'm like, huh? So we turned that into the book. And then we promoted it a little bit. And when we dropped, we ended up being at number 1 in 2 lists. And the biggest list of all, we were number 2 for a long time. We were number 2 to Malcolm Gladwell's sequel to The Tipping Point. So I have a screen grab showing that. I remember showing my parents, I'm like, you guys probably don't know Malcolm Gladwell, but this is a big deal. I'm number 2 to Malcolm Gladwell. So that's how it played out. And that's what led to the book. And that's my story.
That's a good story. I love the candid nature of it too, right? We can market a book, of course. Maybe we can't. There's advice in there for all of us. I love it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so in marketing in this book, you primarily aimed it at the healthcare space.
Yes.
And those were a lot of the, business challenges that you were trying to address within it. Why do you think it resonates so strongly with that audience?
Well, we focus on 2 markets. Healthcare, because of my background, I did a number of turnarounds and then was part of the growth of one of the largest integrated financial healthcare delivery systems in the world, one of the first and largest. And by integrated financial healthcare delivery system, that means you have the finance arm, the insurance, you have the providers, the physicians, you have the hospitals, and you have all of the medical equipment type things and the outbound providers like PT and OT. We were one of the first to do that. It was a novel concept 20 years ago or so. And now, for better or worse, it is what's out there. And I believe it was for better. I really do believe that it's helped change the world. And so that plus the turnarounds prior to that meant that if I didn't at least put my healthcare out there, I would be foolish. I'd be leaving something on the table. Our second market has been B2B, and we really have honed that into mid-market B2B. And that's typically 50 to 100 million, but we still have a number of clients in the 15, 20, 30 million annual revenue, but 50 to 150 million annual revenue. And so those are our 2 markets. So the reason that it's such common parallels, even though healthcare is different, is because those 6 right fit target markets are the same for both healthcare and B2B. And they are. And so that enables that piece of the book to apply to everything. But healthcare is driven so much by referral source marketing that's why I built RIP around referral source marketing. I don't mean referrals like someone posted a 5. I'm talking about someone that actually connects you with someone to buy. Well, I saw very quickly that while in healthcare, that's mandatory. Surgeons are sending, primary care doctors are sending someone to a surgeon. A surgeon is sending someone for physical therapy. The referrals are how the business works in healthcare. I saw that B2B and professional services companies are driven by referral source marketing. MASSolutions gets most of our business by people who know, like, and trust me and connect other people with me. So I took the same things we built to grow those turnarounds before UPMC and then to grow UPMC. All of that's the healthcare IP that applied with twists and tweaks to B2B. So the book title's healthcare, but the concepts apply to healthcare and B2B.
Got it. And if you had to narrow the book down, just distill it into one or two core concepts that you want our audience or really any B2B, revenue engine to walk away with, what would they be and why?
There's 3 parts. The first part is tied to the definition of marketing. And my definition of marketing from way back in, I hate to say it was like late 90s, is that it's clearly define your customers, find out what they want, develop it. That's a key thing there. It's part of marketing. Give it to them when and where they want it at a price they're willing to pay. So pricing is part of marketing, and so is building the product. So that's the first thing, is understanding that definition and how important systematically gathered insights are to all of that, to find out who the target audiences should be, to find out what they want, to find out where they want it, what price they'll pay. So insights-driven, systematically insights-driven marketing with that definition. The second one is the 6 right fit target markets and storytelling to those 6 right fit target markets. And the third one is B2E. Now that's a term that we built IP around. I don't know the term was used. I didn't hear that term anywhere else. I came up with it. Now that doesn't mean subconsciously I didn't hear it 20 years ago, but probably about 2014, 15, I was frustrated with people not understanding how important marketing was to recruiting, to retention, and to results. Results meaning productivity. Because if your cultural storytelling is strong, your results will improve productivity. So recruiting, retention, and results is B2E. So I said, let's make a term. We're going to call it business to employee marketing, business to employee storytelling. That is a piece of the book too. So those are the 3 main pieces. And I believe those are what are great for today and tomorrow. Over the next 10 years, you're going to see B2E become even more and more important to companies.
I think you're absolutely right on that one. Okay, Dave. Well, as we move toward the end of the podcast, there are 2 questions that we ask every guest. And the first one is, if you could go back maybe 5, 10 years, what's one piece of advice you would give to your career advice you would give to your younger self?
Yeah, I would say what I would tell 5 or 10 years ago is the help that I've got from opening up and seeking out others. I've been open to it my whole career, but not as much as I have been the last 10 years. And I had a mentor who taught me that trust begets trust. You have to trust others first before they'll trust you, and you will get burnt sometimes by trusting people not worthy of it. So I've lived by that mantra. But what I started doing about 10, 12 years ago was just constantly going out and seeking advice and asking really tough questions about MASSolutions and me, and joining mastermind groups and things of that nature. So I would tell anyone, and myself 10 years earlier, to do that as quickly as you can, and to trust others, ask their opinion, shut up, listen, and be willing to change. Because that's the other thing. Like I'll be in a CEO mastermind group and they'll tell me something and I do it, and I'll see other people not necessarily do it. Or I'll hire someone like this person I hired to help with our positioning. I did 85, 90% of what she said during the first 3 months, but yet someone will pay big dollars for MASSolutions and do 20% of what we recommended. And that's because there's a stubbornness. There's not a willingness to grow and listen to others. That's what I would say.
That's good advice. The final question is, we're recording this in November of 2025, looking out 5 years into the future. What could potentially be our reality in 2030? A big shift coming for the marketplace, for B2B marketing in particular, that not a lot of people are talking about right now.
Well, the buzz has to be around AI, so I'll just touch that. I don't think AI will replace marketers, but I think it will continue to expose bad marketers and weak marketers and even mediocre marketers. If someone is replacing your content with AI, your content must have sucked, because I use AI. And if I would stop at using AI for content, it's awful. Awful. Let me say it again, awful. Now, if you prime it really good and edit it really good, it can be good and still save you some time. But, and I'm going way beyond content, marketing is not going to be replaced by AI. What it's going to be is the human part is going to be even more strong, the human driven clarity amplified by AI, which is what you're seeing already by the people who are really using it the way that it's meant to be used. Is it can amplify human clarity. And that's how we use it. And I think that's going to continue to happen. Now, that's not to say that all of us aren't going to lose business, because it's going to take a while for people to realize. And I give this analogy. When SurveyMonkey came out, our research element was like, oh shit, everybody's going to be using SurveyMonkey. Well, what happened? About 2 years later, people went, oh, we do all these SurveyMonkey things and we don't get really anything valuable, and it just sits over in the corner on the computer. Because SurveyMonkey is a tool that if someone is good at writing the questions and not putting 22 questions when they could do 4, okay? So everybody got SurveyMonkey and put 28 questions, no one answered them. So the point is, the same thing is going to happen. AI is absolutely here to stay. It's changing the world, will continue to change the world, but it doesn't mean marketing has to go away. So we're going to lose business in the short term. There's going to be people that think they did. Look on LinkedIn right now. You can see AI generated posts. You can look at them. First of all, they have emojis and stuff that that person wasn't using until they started using ChatGPT for their posts. And the posts are all starting to run together. So the same thing's going to happen. You're going to see that this AI can be amazing and can amplify the human clarity that was brought to it by someone with a strategic mind and a creative mind. So the weaker people might have to go do something else. The middling people, not sure. But the top tier people, top creatives and top strategists, they'll be fine.
I am nodding my head vigorously to this. Yeah, I mean, you see it everywhere, right? And it can help amplify if the agents are built really well, if they are trained really well. And most of the time they need to be trained really well on something that a human has done really well for years beforehand. Dave, your example of LinkedIn, everywhere from the posts to the comments and the replies on the posts, you can instantly see that it's just kind of hilarious, because the pendulum has swung so far in that direction. It's like, well, what are we doing now? Because there's been no human touch from that content creation to the comment on that post to then the quote unquote reply to that post. So it's all being handled by AI. And, I think for now, the cases of people raising their hands or balking at that are isolated. However, I do firmly believe that pendulum will swing back, and that once people get over, the incredible commercial promise of more, that efficiency is going to give way to the measuring of its effectiveness. And we're going to see that it's not differentiated, it's getting drowned out. And unfortunately, it seems to be driving people away from the platforms that we really are using to engage with them in the first place.
Remember how the conversation started. Most people are driven by efficiency, so they're excited that they can do social posts in minutes. But once it comes out that, wait, we need this to be effective, like you just said, then that's when they're going to be calling Cory, me, and other people to say, wait a minute, I've realized that everybody's doing it efficiently, but doesn't mean it's effective. And that's when the real marketers come out.
Exactly. Well, Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And if people want to learn more about you, connect, where would you send them?
I'd say LinkedIn, Dave Mastovich. If you'd like a copy of my book, email me at dave@masssolutions.biz, and that's MASSolutions.B as in boy, I as in ice cream, Z as in zebra. And that's how personal I am. You email me after hearing this, give me your address, I'll send you a signed copy.
Sounds good. Well, I'm sure we'll have a lot of listeners take you up on that. Thanks again for joining us. Take care.
Thanks. See ya.
You've been listening to the B2B Revenue Executive Experience. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.